I'm Kathleen Henderson from Roots and Boots, and I'm going to show you how to plant onions, onion sets, and onion seedlings. I prefer to start my onions from seed. I've done that for several years now, and I just like having control over the exact varieties that I choose, and I like having a hand in the entire process. It's cheaper also to buy packets of seeds as opposed to onion sets or even onion seedlings, which I suppose you could buy. That would be a third option. And I've grown sets and seedlings that I've grown myself from seed, and I just feel like the homegrown onions that I started myself from seed do better in the long run. They're just healthier and sturdier, and I prefer that method. This year I ran into a little bit of an issue where it was partly my fault. I should have started more red onion seeds, but then partly some of them just didn't thrive, and so I wound up in a situation where I really needed some red onions. I didn't have time to start them from seed again. It was already too late in the season, and all of my typical sources where I would order quality red onion sets from were sold out because it was so late in the season. So I had to resort to picking some up at a big box store, which I do not recommend, but I was desperate, so I picked some up at Lowe's. They do say non-GMO. Who knows what that means? So this is like not even plan B for me. It's like plan C or plan D. But it gives me the opportunity to show you how to plant sets and how to plant seedlings, whether you purchase those at a nursery or whether you grow them yourself from seed. So one thing I do that you'll notice here is that I do not pot up my onion seedlings. For one thing, I have done that before, and it just takes an insane amount of pot. So I leave them in the trays that I started the seeds in, and you can get them out into the ground pretty early. I am running pretty late. It's nearing the end of April here in zone 7A. I've already planted other onion seedlings up in my kitchen garden. Those have been in the ground for weeks in my raised bed boxes. These onions, like I said, are a little bit late getting in, but they still will have plenty of time. It will be fine. But I transfer them directly from the seed trays into the ground. Another thing that you'll notice, and I learned this tip from Elliot Coleman, who gardens in Maine. He's kind of like the grandfather of organic vegetable growing in the United States. Highly recommend his books. Is that in every soil block, now it didn't work out in all of them, but in every soil block, I aimed for about 4 seeds, to have about 4 onion plants growing in every soil block. And you grow those 4 onions right up close together. It's really fascinating. They all push outward and find the space that they need, and it saves space, planting space in your garden. So here I've done that same thing with my sets. I've put 4 in the ground all together, a little group of 4. And literally you just sit them down in the dirt like that. I just planted these today, a few hours ago, and they will begin to send roots down into the ground, and they will send up a green shoot just like the other onions, and that is how you plant onion sets. I start my onion seeds in early February. You can even start them in late January. Again, I'm in zone 7A. These onion seedlings I started on February 2nd, and like I said, now it's almost the end of April, and I'm finally getting these in the ground. This particular variety is yellow sweet Spanish. I've marked this marker that I had in my seed tray to keep my seed trays straight. I'm just gonna stick this in the ground to show where my red onion sets end and where my new variety begins. I will come back later. These don't hold up well over the entire growing season, so I'll come back later. I have it's kind of like a plastic ribbon that I will tie onto the fence right here to mark each different variety. That will hold up a lot better through the weather. But for now, I'm gonna put this in the ground. It's pretty self-explanatory. I just take out 1 soil block from my seed tray, and then I make a little divot in the ground, set that in there. If it has any roots coming out the bottom, I just try to make sure to set them down in there so they can come in good contact with the soil, push a little bit of dirt around it, and that's that. Since I like to grow them together in groups of 4, if I run into a soil block that only has 1 or 2 or fewer than 4, then I will just kind of group several of them together so that I have 4 onions in one planting hole. This one is perfect, it's got 4. Sit that down in there with all of its little roots. Cover it up. Easy peasy. Now I just have 7 trays of these to get into the ground. Another planting tip, and this holds true for just about anything that you plant, especially as the temperatures warm up and it can get pretty hot in the afternoon. I like to wait until later in the day to get my plants in the ground. If you plant in the morning, then those newly transplanted seedlings have to go through an entire day of sun and potentially heat. And so instead, I like to wait till later in the day, evening even if possible, to get the plants in the ground. That way they have a cooler part of the day, you know, overnight to kind of get acclimated before they have to go through a hot part of the day. Another planting tip that also holds true for planting anything is to thoroughly soak, thoroughly water your seedlings a little while before you plant them so that they're well soaked and the roots are in very damp soil. This will help them make the transition when you transfer them into the ground. You can see, here's a block that didn't wind up having any seeds germinate, but you can see that it's very damp and moist, so that's just perfect. You don't want it to be like sopping wet, but you want it to be well watered. I'm also planting some white onion sets. I figured since I was grabbing the red onion sets, I might as well grab some white onions. You can never have too many onions, right? This year I hope to chop and freeze more than I did last year, and maybe even dry some onions this year. So I wanted to show you, you plant it in like a little square. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just stick it right down in the ground. This one already has a little green shoot coming up. And so what will happen is each bulb will grow out to find the space that it needs. And that is one way that you can conserve space, planting space in your garden. I mean, how easy is this? You just stick them right down in the ground. You do want them to be kind of down in the ground, so either you can push them down so that they're a little bit covered, or you can kind of just push some dirt around them.